And I want to thank Frontier International Plainfield Area Organization for inviting me here. I know you invited me last year. I couldn't make it, but I'm going to try to make it up to you today. I appreciate it, and it's a pleasure to be here with my colleague, Mayor Adrian Mack, who is on the battlefield with me in the state of New Jersey, trying to make sure that we take care of the people of our state the way they should be, and definitely the people of our communities the way they need to be taken care of. And what about these young people here today? They were amazing, from the young kids who sung up here today to the young lady in the jazz band. It was a treat for me, the dancers, and you know, finally the award recipients, right? The scholarship recipients. Let's give them all a round of applause, please. Please. We have to show them that we love and care and we pay attention to their successes, because everyone else is paying attention to their failure. And we have a lot of conversation about how horrible our community is and how terrible our kids are, but that wasn't the case in here today. It was a wonderful display, and I don't know what the area newspaper is, but they should be here recording this, but I know we got Positive Community Magazine in the joint today, so I know they're gonna write something up positive about what happened here today, so I'm looking forward to reading that. So God never promised us easy, and I know some of us might look for easy, but God never promised us that. If you look at, you know, just a few of the folks in the Bible, you will see that they didn't have it easy. If you look at what happened to them because of the things that they said and they believed, they were persecuted for it. You know that John the Baptist was beheaded by King Herod because of the things that he believed. You know that Jeremiah was put in a pit of mud because of the things that he believed. So God never promised us easy, and I know some of us are looking for easy. In fact, the minute you say you believe in something, the very next minute it'll be challenged. So it takes a level of commitment and faith to be on the right side of history. And when you have an idea, there will always be something or someone to challenge that idea, and there is nothing greater than an idea whose time is right. In fact, an idea whose time has come is more powerful than guns and bombs, as ideas outlast our small time on this planet. But the only thing more powerful than that idea is the faith that idea will come true. When the Wright brothers decided to build a plane because they got an idea to defy gravity, it was an important part of history, but the idea itself wouldn't have been enough. The faith in that idea is what put them in the seat of that plane to challenge gravity and create the miracle of flight. Such as the idea of equality, human brotherhood, democracy, and the freedom from hunger. This is a relatively new idea in this country that we haven't realized yet. But there have been a few of us whose faith in that idea has brought them face to face with extreme hatred and the sickness of white supremacy, with the perversion of nihilism, and on the doorsteps of poverty. And so our seats here today are very expensive seats. They are not expensive because how they were crafted or built, because they are mounted in this beautiful building, but they are expensive because they have been paid for by the struggle of thousands to see us through to this day. Our travels to this building this morning has been littered with the bodies dangling from trees, bridges, even light poles that wear the charred skins of our people. It is anchored by young college students that sat at Woolworth lunch counter from North Carolina A&T. It is haunted by the thousands that fell to the ground on Bloody Sunday in Selma. By 4 little girls whose frail bodies were torn to pieces in God's living room. Or the children whose blood stains the blacktops of our cities, and the sounds of the voiceless screaming in the embers of our cities burning to be free. Yeah, God never promised us easy. but he did promise us victory. So our great-great-great-grandmothers called God's name in the middle of the woods, not because they were slaves, but because one day they knew they would be free. Young children were pulled off buses in the Jim Crow South and beaten nearly to death, sung songs to God, not because segregation had smothered America's conscience, but because they believed in the penetrating sound of God's trumpet. They believed and had faith in victory, and our faith in that victory is what should keep us in the fight. No matter what is put before us, we have to have the same faith that Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego had, to believe that even when promised to meet fire, that they would be victorious. I know it's difficult sometimes because as we take a step forward, it seems that we get pushed 2 steps back. We lose hope because it seems unwinnable, overwhelming. Our obstacles so great that you find yourself in a deep pit of mud with only loose rags and tattered cloth to get out. So we say, an old Negro spirit, you ain't gonna let nothing turn us around. But words, he didn't bring us this far to leave us now. In 1863, at the close of slavery, they promised us freedom, but not the foundation to be free. And while they gave out free land in the Homestead Act in the West and the Midwest, they refused us 40 acres and a mule, so we won our freedom, but not the means to be free. Then they created slave codes that made it illegal for us to work, but didn't give us the means to have a job. We won the right to vote, but had to fight for the Voting Rights Act of '65 because though we could vote legally, they stood in our way physically. In 1954, we shattered the walls of legal segregation in America, but 50 years later, more than 70% of black children still attend segregated schools, both by race and by class. In fact, there are more black men in prison today than existed in slavery in 1850. There are more black men in prison today than existed in slavery in 1850. And though we traveled and left the barbarism and savagery of the Deep South in search for freedom and jobs, we met indifference and neglect and were trapped on a desolate island of poverty in these cities. We watched GIs come home from the war, given access to housing in the suburbs. We witnessed banks subsidize growth and development in housing and jobs in American suburbs while they drew giant red circles around our cities and condemned generations of people of color to despair and underdevelopment, some who fought on those same beaches in Normandy and the white sands of northern Africa. They met poverty and indifference on the streets of New Jersey. We push forward 1 step and we get pushed back 2 steps. What King began to find out is that the same people who stood by his side in Montgomery wouldn't stand by his side in Chicago. He learned the difficult lesson that those who took blows with him on the streets of Selma refused to stand by him in Memphis with sanitation workers. He figured out the hard way that while some unions were in solidarity against the vile and inhumane acts of Bill Connor, they were not as passionate about making sure that those union jobs were available to people of color. It was that some Americans were appalled by the vicious and violent treatment towards blacks in the South, but they were not ready to fight for full equality. That is that they were willing to integrate the parks, just not the boardrooms. They were willing to allow you to sit at their lunch counters, just not in their corporate offices. They were not against letting you in the store, just not getting you the wages to buy out of that same store. Like today, I read an article in Huffington Post proclaiming the rights of black and brown children to a quality education and a desire for equality, but the same author had abdicated her responsibility to make sure that those children she allegedly fought for, that their parents had those same rights that she had in deciding where her children could go to school and what education could look like. We are not new to education. We fought for public schools right out of slavery. In fact, Mary McLeod Bethune sold sweet potato pies to build an institution of higher learning for our people. We know what our children need. The poison of paternalism and the arrogance of supremacy makes some people sick with the false idea of superiority and drowns our children in a debilitating self-hatred that arose at their dreams and covers their reflections. We don't need you to tell us how to educate our babies. All we need is the resources to do so, and we'll do it ourselves. We don't need your handouts. We only need investment. We don't need your paternalism. We just need jobs and good wages. And I'm tired of financial literacy classes. We need a bank account. We need a good job. We need living wages. We don't want your welfare. We want businesses in our own community, by our own people. We want our kids to get decent education and graduate from the best colleges with the best education that they can get. We want them in our neighborhoods as representatives of our people, as models, as citizens for our babies. We don't need your handouts. We don't need your goodwill. We need power in our communities. We need our families to be strong, and we need our children to live in communities and not die on dirty sidewalks. Dr. King challenged the tenets of democracy and held a mirror to its face. He showed the country its ugly and hateful self and pushed it to live out its true meaning. He was doing that when he died. He saw democracy not just as our ability to vote, but our necessity to hold the offices we vote for. He did not see it as merely an opportunity to eat at the same establishments, but to also secure the resources in order that we can afford to do the same. He didn't view democracy as a chance to sit next to white folks in school, but as a means to empower a community that was left on the side of the road, purposefully neglected, the denial of a decent education. To King, democracy meant a place where workers were guaranteed the right to work, where students were given the right to have an education because they deserved it and not because they were rich. Democracy to King meant that the war machine was transformed into an apparatus for housing, for schools, and for jobs. Democracy means a government that takes care of its sick, takes care of its elderly, a democracy where the might of the majority is not used to crush or silence those that disagree. American democracy is less than 50 years out of legal apartheid. Apartheid in America was called Jim Crow. We have a long way to go to get to the place that King dreamt about, but he gave his life for. The question is for us, we must grapple with daily as we move in our day-to-day lives is how much did we love King? And are we the silent people that he spoke of? More importantly, do we understand in the words of Martin Luther King that change does not roll in on the wheels of inevitability, but comes through continuous struggle? And so we must straighten our backs and work for our freedom. A man can't ride you unless your back is bent. That today, we have the ability to know whatever it is that we want to know, that we have access to countless resources, that we can speak any language we think of. We can travel to the most remote places on the planet to solve almost any problem that is put before us, but we have not solved the problem of inequality. We have the capacity to feed this planet, to clothe and house everyone, but have not found the will to do so. That we can't agree even to slow down the pace of the rich getting richer, that is to allow them to be rich, but at a slower pace just to be able to make the rest of the world catch up. That the top 2 wealthiest people on the planet have more money than the entire sub-Saharan Africa combined. There's a lot of work to be done. And when we celebrate King, we're not just celebrating his legacy or a dream. And sometimes it hurts me to hear people talk about King and diminish his life to a 15-minute speech. They make his life about a dream. And I understand when people say that because they don't really know who King was. That the King of 1954 is not the King of 1962. And the King of 1962 was not the King who was murdered in the Lorraine Motel in Memphis, Tennessee, on the eve of giving his speech against Vietnam, talking about the 3 evils of America: militarism and poverty and racism. If you look at us in 2015, we're still plagued by militarism, we're still plagued by poverty, and we're still plagued by racism. Our children, yesterday I gave a speech at Jehovah Jireh Church in Newark, and the kids were wearing shirts that said Black Lives Matter. And our kids have to wear shirts that say Black Lives Matter because in America we're still fighting for our humanity. We're still fighting like we were in 1857 in Dred Scott when they said we had no rights, that they were bound to respect. We're still fighting like in 1896 in Plessy versus Ferguson when they said separate was equal. They're still fighting like it said in the Constitution that we were only 3/4 of human beings. Our kids still have to wear shirts that say Black Lives Matter, but some Americans have not understood that we are human beings too, that their humanity is tied to the humanity of all Americans, and that when you put one American superior to another, that you are destroying democracy, not upholding democracy. And so our babies in 2015 have to wear shirts that say that their lives matter, that it means that us as leadership in this country are falling, that it means that leadership in this country, we have fallen and are falling short of our duties and responsibility. We are not doing what we need to do. And I'm going to close, you know, there's a story in the Bible about an apostle named John who was exiled to an island called Patmos. And they exiled him to the island of Patmos because they was tired of him preaching the gospel. And that's our job as leaders, to preach the good word, to be a righteous example, to talk even when it's uncomfortable, to say the truth when it's not convenient, to do the things that we're supposed to do even if we're afraid that we won't be elected the next 4 years around, that we're supposed to stand up when nobody else will, that we're supposed to be the voice for the voiceless, and when there's a gap, we stand in it, that when God said send someone, we say send me. And that's what we're supposed to do. And like John in the Bible, they'll try to isolate us or send us to the Isle of Patmos. And they sent them to Patmos because Patmos was a sterile island. That means that it could not give birth to anything, that nothing would grow on that island. What a better place to send a person who was planting seeds, but to an island that could not give birth. He was planting the seed of revolution. He was planting the seed of transformation. He was teaching the good news. And so he was exiled to Patmos. And so they thought if he taught there that nothing would grow, that nothing would germinate, that nothing would come out of it, but they were mistaken. Because 50 years after King's murder in Lorraine Motel, we are still here talking about him today, 50 years later, hundreds and hundreds of miles away. And in every city, in every state in America, we are celebrating his birthday today. So what they did, the king did not work. His legacy and his truth lives on and marches on. And so our job as leaders is when they try to exile us, when the papers write negative things about us, when they threaten us and when they hold us and try to burn the bridges that separate us from the community, we have to stand strong. And we cannot be fearful of the fact that these people will tell our stories, because when we do good and we do what's right, our stories will be told by the people in our communities, and they will uphold us, and they will surround us, and they will protect us as God protected us. Amen. Amen. We need to remember that when we celebrate King. This day is not just a day off. It's a day on. It's not an opportunity for us to celebrate. It's an opportunity for us to reflect. It's not just an opportunity for us to sleep in the bed because we don't have to go to work. It's an opportunity for us to get out and fellowship and plan and strategize because we got a long, long road to go. We've come a long way in America, but we got a long, long way to go. God bless you. God speed to you. God keep you.